Hey everybody, it's Doom here from Dungeons and Doom Biscuit, and I have this DC Heroclix called Ace, and I want to convert this into one of the Ravengers. The Ravengers are like these low intelligence mutated humanoids that live on the scraplands, like in heavily polluted areas, like real heavily like radiated areas, and they are obsessed with plastic like milk jugs and stuff, and they melt them to their bodies as like, I don't know how to explain it. It becomes kind of part of them, and you can rip it off and break it off and stuff, but they think it protects them. It doesn't, but that's their deal. So I'm going to get him off the base first. And to do that, I'm just going to see if I can easily pry him off with a knife before I do any kind of intense snipping tool stuff. He came off real easy. That's perfect. Now, before I put him on a new base, which is going to be more akin to a size medium base, which is a little thick because but it's the right size. I want to drill a hole in his hand to put a weapon. So let me find my pin vise, which is like a little hand drill that they use in jewelry ring. And I'm happy with his pose. This is going to be perfect for what I want. So Ravengers. Let me move my camera up a little of my nose. There we go. Ravengers use whatever like the coolest and biggest weapons they can find. So they have like rocket launchers. Often they don't know how to reload them and stuff. Sometimes they do. But they have, you know, just over the top ridiculous weapons. They like carrying things like enormous pieces of like wheel axles and stuff as weapons. They're goofy. That's got to be about through there by now, you'd think. Yeah, I got to be real close. Okay. I'm going to clean that up a little bit right there, just where the extra plastic is. I'm going to see if I can put a toothpick through there. This pin vise is a little bit more narrow than a toothpick, but sometimes you can kind of shove them. Depending on the toothpick, sometimes they'll go and sometimes they won't. Okay, cool. So now I got his hand how I want it. I'm going to cut a little bit of this away so it opens up a little more naturally. And I'm going to snip this off. Like that, just like that, and that's going to be the handle of his weapon. And now I can get him on his base. So I want my base to be pretty simple. So all I'm doing is getting some cardstock. This is just real crappy Rice Krispie box stuff. I hope my glue gun's heated up. It is. Look at that. Perfect. All I'm going to do is shove that down on there. Get a good bond. I'm just going to trace around here. I'll try to cut that off around the outside. And that knife blade's not very sharp. Oops. And now it's safe for the garbage. I don't want my friendly neighborhood garbage men getting chopped up on my garbage. Okay. Alright, just going to cut a little line across there to bisect that. And I'm just going to cut a little piece to make this a little interesting. I'm just going to draw a line across here with my glue, just like that. And I'm going to snip that off. And now my base is kind of interesting. Not terribly interesting, but kind of interesting. I'm just going to get a little dibby dab of glue on his feet to get him started and how I want him on here. Okay, just like that. Cool. Now that's not a permanent fix, and that is going to come loose. So I'm just going to get a tiny dab of glue on there. I'm going to stick him to this, and I'm going to get some super glue, and I'm going to let it pull under his feet a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to get the baking soda and solidify that. He's pretty sturdy on there. He's not quite perfectly sturdy, but he's pretty sturdy. I'm just going to grab my super glue, kind of come in and get another dab on there, and hope that solidifies to where he just won't budge. Okay. Now he's real sturdy on there. He bends a little bit because he's rubber, but he's sturdy. So how am I going to do the plastic bags? Well, I thought about that a little bit, and there's a couple different ways I could do it. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of cook this guy with my fire to make sure he holds his new base coat real good. He doesn't have any clothes or anything, so I'm not worried about him losing any definition really, or any detail. He's pretty basic. Okay. So I want his plastic to be kind of organic and good. And I think hot glue could do it, but I haven't tried. So what I'm going to do is on his side here, I'm just going to get a little dab of glue like that, and then I'm going to rub it around, just like that. And I'm just going to get little dabs of glue and put it on him. And then when I paint him, I'll paint those grays and browns. And you want a little bit of detail rubbed into that. You don't want it to just be smooth, because even though it was a milk crate or milk carton or milk jug, you know, they melted it to him to get it the way you want it. Okay. I'm just smearing that around in different spots. He's going to have one on each peck. They're not going to be even. It's probably just half a milk carton pushed against his skin and melted. I'm going to do some on his face here. Just like that. These guys love plastic and rubber. And they believe it makes them stronger and immortal. So now we need a head for our weapon. And a giant axe could be cool, or anything could be cool. I don't know what we're going to use. We can make a giant axe head real easy. Or we could dig through my bin over here and see if I got any weapon parts. That'd be good. I have this cool blade that might be nice for this. It's kind of heavy. I have two of those also, so I don't mind sacrificing one. If I don't like it, I can get rid of it. Now, I don't want this to be so ridiculously big, so since I'm putting that glaive on there, I'm going to snip this off about right there. I'm going to snip this off like that. I'm just going to hit this with rough this with a sanding block a little bit to make sure it's not too smooth. Just rough this up a little bit to make sure it holds paint. Now this blade is real nice and good looking, and probably don't want it to be too nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of come in here and nick this blade up a little bit and try to make it look a little destroyed. I'm not putting a whole bunch of effort into this, but I want it to definitely not look perfect. And a little bit more would be good. I'm going to heat this up where I sanded it to kind of get rid of any sticky uppies. And that'll smooth it out real nice. While it's still hot, just get a piece of cardboard and kind of push anything down that you need to, like that. And this is a little cartoony and not as sharp on the end. I'm just going to follow the natural contour of that and make it a little less cartoony and a little sharper. That's all I'm doing, nothing too fancy. Blade's a little thick up here. Okay. Still a little bit big. I'm just going to come in here and snip off a little bit more until I'm happy. I'm going to get a tiny dab of glue just to hold this for a minute. Just to hold that in place. Make sure I got it centered in how I want it. Just like that. Looks like it belongs there. Very natural and good. I can kind of twist this in his hand a little bit to fix the angle if I don't like how it's sitting. Then I'm going to get well, you don't want any spider webs there when you do this part. I'm going to get a dab of glue. I'm going to run it down. And I'm going to bring it up onto the blade and let it run down into his hand some. Then I'm going to sturdy this up. Just like that. Make it a little permanent. Now, there's a piece of, or a drop of glue in this little divot here I don't like. I'm just going to wipe that out. I'm going to sprinkle some more glue on here to get this held in place. Okay. It's pretty sturdy, but now it has a gross texture, so I'm just going to get more glue. I have some brushes I can throw away here, and they make nice robot pieces after you're done anyways. So I'm just going to get that excess glue. I'm going to paint it around on here and just make sure that everything's coated real good. I'm going to coat the bottom of that stick so it doesn't absorb paint or anything. Okay. Is he sturdy on the base? Yeah, he's still sturdy on the base. I'm just going to wipe along. I use that brush since it's kind of ruined already. Hit some of that baking soda off of here so it doesn't interfere with my paint job. And I'm just going to get a piece of like sprue and make just like a piece of garbage on the ground. And to do that, I'm just going to get a dab of glue right here on the base. I'm going to use tweezers. Shove this piece of sprue down onto it. Just like that. Then I'm going to hit it with my hot air gun. I'm just going to use the back of that brush and shove that down a little better. Just like that. Okay. And then I'm just going to drip a little bit of super glue onto that, so it kind of holds it in its forever home. Alright, his base tells a little bit of a story, he tells a little bit of a story. So for his paint job, I'm going to spray him black. Let me clean these tools up a little bit. Get a piece of cardboard here. I'm going to spray him black real quick. Let me get my paints in the other room. All right. Get them set down. Put my paint away. But before I leave to put my paint away, I'm going to start him drying quickly by hitting him with some hot air real quick. There's some spots I missed on the black where the white's showing through, but that's okay. We'll fix it. All right, so we're going to dry him off the rest of the way. And then we're going to have to let him cool for a moment before we do the next step. The next step, we're going to get a makeup brush, something real soft like this. This one's a little damp from earlier. Let me get one that's completely dry. And we need some white paint. He is a miniature, so I'm going to use miniature paint. Now he should be cool. He's still a little soft, but he's going to be all right. We're going to get that paint. We're going to wipe a lot of that off, and then we're going to work on our way down. We're going to paint him white. It's a little bit of step one action. You definitely want to start going down first. Why? I don't know. You just do. You don't want to hit the miniature with the metal part of the brush if you can help it, like I did right there. See how there's some white exposed? You don't want to do that. That was a mistake. Because this paint is not cured. It's just sitting on him, kind of. I'm going to kind of come back around again. Try to focus on the highest parts, making them lighter. Then as you have less paint on your brush, work your way down again. In between his legs and stuff, you're not going to get it perfect, so just do the best you can and call that a win. Under his arms, you might have similar problems. Depending on what sculpture you're using, what miniature you're using to do this too, that's going to change your result heavily. Okay. Now, the easiest answer for this is to use thin down paints. Or if you have speed paints, use speed paints. I'm going to use speed paints now that I'm thinking about it. So when I use speed paints, I just kind of make myself a generic palette. And the easiest way to do that is just throw some masking tape down and get your color speed paint you want to use. So I have a couple different speed paint colors I can use for skin. One of them is called Warrior Skin. And I like this one a lot. It's a darker, richer tone. And depending on how thick or thin you do this, you can kind of pick what shade of human you want them to be. Do you want them to be white or black or something in between, you know? You can really, by how much you thin this out or by how many coats you put, you can really get a lot out of this paint, and it's just super useful for that reason. It doesn't have any kind of like pinkish tone to it, which the other one I have does, the Crusader skin, I think it's called. Yeah, it definitely has like a pinkish tone to it. So it's not as good for this. Before we put any speed paint on him, we want to make sure that everywhere that needs to be white is white. So if you need to get a smaller brush with a little bit of that white paint and get into some of these crevices, make sure you wipe a lot of that off. There's nothing on the brush. And then come in here and hit the spots you need to hit. Because the last thing you want to do is start painting white on this white if you have a bunch that's too dark showing in areas that should be highlighted because they're raised up. Okay? And sometimes those makeup brushes just don't catch those areas. So make sure you're spinning and looking, or on your finished paint job, it'll be super noticeable that you did a bad job. Like inside his hand right there is just black still. Okay, I'm done with that brush. Now we're gonna hit him with the air dryer before we put any paint on here, before we put any of our speed paint on. Okay, and then I have that size 3 homemade brush that I use, and it's just really good for this. I don't really get it wet per se. I dip the very tip of the brush in there, and then I wipe all the water out so my brush is kind of damp. You can use your mouth too, but I have coffee in my mouth right now, so it might not be ideal. And then I'm just going to come around and hit all my flesh bits with this, and whatever this color ends up is the color I was looking for, with one coat with no thinning. This is what I want my end color to look like. I want him to be kind of whatever, you know, he could be this, he could be that, he could be anything. I don't want there to be a specific race that I'm targeting at. He's just a medium-toned mutant person. Because in my future, the concept of being white and black and stuff, in my like dystopian future, it's gone. There's no like white and black anymore. There's just people. Everybody's had sex with everybody, everybody's happy. Well, they're not happy, but they were at one point, and they bred out races. Everyone just bred until there was just one color of person left, okay? That's what my world kind of is. But that's not what causes the problems, so don't read into that too deeply. That's just what happened at one point in history between now and 500 years from now. Racial ambiguity is gone. Okay, so you want to make sure you didn't miss any spots with that. You don't want any white showing or any of the black showing with nothing, without the flesh tone on it. You'll see it later and then you'll be regretting it. Sometimes when you're using these speed paints, you just got to be a little delicate and take your time and make sure you get everywhere. You know, don't miss spots, because going back and trying to fix them later is really tough. Okay, and that is definitely the look we wanted. Okay, see how there's like that kind of deep groove there? We don't want that much paint in there. We're going to pull that out. Now while we're waiting for that to dry is a good time to work on the base. So I'm just going to get a regular brush I would use for minis. I'm going to get a dark burnt umber color here on my cardboard. I'm going to get my brush damp. Probably a larger brush would be easier to use for this task. But I don't want to get anything on the feet, and I'm not taking a chance. I want that speed paint to have time to kind of pull into the areas it needs to pull into and solidify a little bit and get a little gelled. It won't dry super fast, but if I use the hot air gun on it immediately, the results will not be great. If you can't get every single piece of this train under here painted, and some of the regular color sticks through, it's not going to kill you, right? It's okay. It'll be all right. All right, I'm going to do my outside here in this nice dark brown too. so it's still kind of like part of the scrap land. And when I do my fantasy miniatures, I like to do like a pure black base because I like it to look like the border between fantasy and reality. But with the scrap stuff, I've noticed that just to keep moving quickly and to not play that game, that I just make the base just kind of, even the sides of it and stuff all go together. Plus, I use these thicker pieces of wood for bases sometimes because they really make a nice like fake height adjustment to a miniature. They make it seem a little taller and bigger than it really is, somewhat. Now right there, is that a glue? Let me wipe off this brush and see. Is that a piece of bristle or is that, I don't know what that is. Yeah, look at that. It was a piece of, what you call her? It was a piece of spider web. It's on him still and I can't get it off. There we go, is that it? Did I get it off him? I think I did. All right, let's try to get some more of that paint and cover that up a little bit so it's not super noticeable. All right, I don't think it's super noticeable. All right, we're gonna use that same brown. We're gonna do the handle of this sword, just like this. We're just gonna be real careful not to get it on his hand. So you know the concept of using non-metallic metals. You use like 3 shades of different color to work it down, and you know, I don't do that shit. I just use metallic paints and get the result I want. But on this, I want to do something a little different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that one brush I was using. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to use this brush. This is a soft, kind of dumb brush. I'm going to use a soft, kind of dumb brush here. I'm going to get some white paint on it. And then I'm just going to kind of drag it around and give this sword a rough looking lighter finish here. Okay? Because I don't want the end product to be too light or too bright or too vivid. So I'm just touching this with that white, just like that. Okay? And it's not going to be the nice coat he had, but it's going to perform a similar function. Alright, so I have a couple different colors of metallics. I'm going to use this one called Broadsword Silver. It's a metallic speed paint. Let me mix this in the mixer because I don't want it to be separated. You should mix this for like a minute, I bet, but I don't do that. Get a little drop of that. Get that miniature brush. Any of those brushes will work, actually. I'm going to use the miniature brush to do... No, I don't want to use a miniature brush. I'm going to use this brush over here. And I'm not getting this damp or wet. I'm just going to use the speed paint to do it, to get it wet. Okay? And then I'm going to paint this with it. Now, see how the paint kind of melted into the speed paint because I didn't dry it all the way? That's the end result of what I did. I had that coming. I did that to myself. All right, his body's starting to dry. We're going to use this same brush I just had there, and we're going to get a little bit of a copper color. We're going to grab our cardboard, get just the tiniest dab of copper. Oh, give me a dab of copper. Way more than I needed. That'll learn me. So I'm going to get that copper in my wet brush and a little bit of that brown. I'm going to darken that up. And then I'm going to come down here on my base and I'm going to create some variation. Just like that. Then I'm going to just drag that down in some spots onto the sides so it looks congruous and like it's part of it. And then with that same brush and just a dab of this, I'm going to make a little bit of smear into this like design on the sword. Just mixing that in with my speed paint a little bit into those grooves. Just to change the color down there and make it a little dingier. Like that part doesn't really get serviced or taken care of as much. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to drag a little bit more up into it, but with less of the brown. And I hope that dries and gives me a cool effect. I don't know if it will, but I'd like to think it will. And then with a little bit less, just kind of drag it up along the blade in the middle. Let it dry into that speed paint. Now, for the trash bags, we're going to need to dry him off a little bit with some hot air. So let me put my speed paints away that I was using. Move that up there. Okay, now I'm going to get a lightish gray color. I'm going to grab the color I'm using is called, if I can find it, it's called Elephant Gray. It's a real light gray. It's not the lightest gray I have. And I don't need much of that. I'm going to get my miniature brush, like my size one that I use to paint maze with. This is a starter brush from Army Painter. I'm going to kind of wipe some of that off because I don't know how thick I want this to go on here. And I'm going to start with where I put my trash bag or my hot glue to be like the melted on plastic. And I'm just going to pick out some of the spots that I put plastic on him and paint those to different degrees. Where that plastic's melted on. I have some different areas, so what I'm going to do on my guy to make him a little more interesting is I'm going to do some of it in this lighter gray, and I'm going to do some of it in a darker gray and some of it in a brown. All I'm doing is following this real lightly with a thin coat, following the seams of that plastic well, it's hot glue, but you know what I mean. And then so if I come back and I see that it's real thin, so if I see that it's dried and some of the flesh is showing through, I'll just dab it again with some real thin coat and make sure we hide that. Because we don't want any of the flesh showing through on that. You could probably leave it just like that and it looks pretty good, honestly. I'm going to get a darker gray. This is called pewter. I could have swore I put some by his butt crack. I guess I did not. And then I don't like the way his stomach worked out there where I did that, like pulled that piece of string off. So I'm just going to take that and simulate that his cod piece here is a piece of plastic too. Even though they pride themselves in nudity and they're like silly and they like laugh at big penises and stuff, and that's kind of how they like dictate who the leaders are and who the best people are. And then see where this is kind of dark back here? I don't really like that. So I'm just going to kind of make this up, turn this into a non-3D panel, just like that. Okay. So for the lighter, we're going to need one lighter color of gray here. But give me a second. We're going to hot air gun this dude. I was going to do some of his in brown and I forgot, so. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a small brush and a couple different techniques here. I'm going to get a lighter gray. This is called country gray. It's super light. I'm going to get a brush, small brush. I'm going to use that brush I was just using. Make sure there's not much moisture in it. Then I'm going to get a lot of that off. That's kind of wet and needs shooken up. I'm shooken up. Hold on, let me shake this up. Actually, let me just get a miniature paint. It'll do a better job, it'll give me better coverage, and I won't have to worry. It's kind of the beauty of miniature paints. There's a lot of consistency. Like these are all the same thickness starting out, and I know where to come from. When I use the Walmart paints or the Dollar Tree paints, the consistency's all over the place. So I don't get the same results every time. And I can't even lie and say I have more color choices with these anymore, because I don't. I have, you know, probably more different miniature colored paints than I do craft paint anymore. So I'm getting this really light gray here. I'm wiping a lot of that off, and then I'm going to, on my lighter gray, I'm just going to come kind of dab that around, a real thin coat, and give that some different layers, or different, not really, more like a highlight than a dry brush really is what I'm trying to go for. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of that with that darker paint, like this. I'm going to use that on the darker spots. I'm just going to kind of dab that around and highlight. Now some of this didn't have any 3D because I just like improvised it, like on his crotch and on his arm here. And that's okay. That's all right. We're just going to drag that lighter color around and just carefully make some variation. Now I'm going to get that lighter color again, just that lighter color. And I'm going to get almost all of it off the brush. And on the darker that I just lightened up, I'm going to come around and just do a little bit more variation. Just on the darker part. Just on the highest parts that stick up. Then I'm going to get a little bit of that white I have left and mix that in. And then on the lightest parts, I'm going to drag a little bit of that over there and create a third layer. On just these lighter ones, the lighter plastic. Create a nice looking kind of dealio. Alright, so I'm going to get a little bit of my brown and mix it with that. I'm going to get a lot of that wiped off. And I'm going to kind of just drag it along on the handle some, just to create so that it's not so monotone and boring. Okay, I'm not doing too much work with that. I'm going to come on my base here. with that metallic I had and mix that in. I'm just going to kind of hit this chunk of shit on the ground here that I glued from that sprue, and a couple other little spots with that metallic, just to give it some variation. Now we got to deal with this dude's face. And to do that, I'm going to get a drop of off-white. I'm using this Mummy Robes. It's definitely off-white. Okay. Now I'm going to use a fractional brush. This one's a 0/5 or 5/0, which I don't know what that means. I'm going to wipe some of that off. I'm just going to touch his teeth ever so lightly with that. Just like that. I'm going to hit his eye with that too. Ever so lightly. Let me get a look at that eye. Sometimes it's easier to turn it upside down to get in here. I made his eye a little big. I'm going to fix that by coming back with some of this brown. I'm just going to chuck underneath there and darken that up. Get the shape of his eye how I want. I messed it up a little bit. There we go. Okay. Too easy. Before I do an iris, I'm going to do his iris in a stupid color that doesn't make sense for the Mini. This bright ass crystal blue. Bright as shit. Now I cleaned my fractional brush off with my tongue. Because I don't like to get my fractional brushes with any soap or wetness on them at all. That's just the tiniest dab of blue, and that's all I really needed there. Now, I want his teeth to have some definition instead of just be a white blotch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a very thin brush with a point. And I'm going to get a bone color, like sand golem or pallid bone. I'm using pallid bone. I'm just going to rub that in there real easy with a brush. And that'll give us the tiniest little idea of what we need. Darken his teeth up a little bit. And that is a Ravanger. There's a couple things we could do to really pimp him a little bit. Let's get a bright silver, for example. This is where's that shining silver at? Shining silver. Let's get his blade and accent the edge of it a little bit, so it looks like some kind of maintenance gets put into it. Maybe not expert maintenance, but some kind of maintenance. And instead of doing a smooth line along the edge like I normally do for blades, what I want to do is I want to kind of chip and drag out rough, so it looks like he's sharpening this on rocks or with improvised tools, and he's not a talented weaponsmith. Okay, so a brush that's not perfectly smooth on the end, it's a little jaggedy, might be good for this. And he doesn't know better, and he tries to sharpen the back a little bit maybe. And that's definitely going to give it a little bit more of a, you know, he made an effort look. So there he is. I don't think we really need to do too much more to him besides give him a nice clear coat and send him on his way. I'm going to get some of that silver though. I'm going to just rub a little bit on this metal down here so it's a little more noticeable. There's a little spot there that could use a highlight. And then on that panel, just on the edges of that panel, something like that to make him pop and seem a little more extravagant and exciting. He's dirty, he's happy, he's everything he needs to be. You could darken him up in some spots and give him some mud, but you don't really need to. He tells the story he needs to tell. And that's a Ravanger. The melted plastic and all. Now you could really be disgusting and put like pink all the way around where it's melted and gross it out. You could. I'm not sure if I even want to try that. Let me see. Let me get a red. This is a mistake. I can tell you now. I like the paint job how it is. You could get a red speed paint and a micro tiny brush, you know, something fractional. Make sure your tip is super wet with spit before you try this. And you could drag that along the edges up some of that plastic. And show that as it gets pulled and stretched, it kind of rips out a little bit in some spots. That's a gross story to tell, but that's definitely something you could do. It's not something I wanted to do, but now that I had the idea, I feel like we're obligated to try it a little bit. You want to just take your time. You don't want it to be on every single edge. Especially on the bottoms, it probably rips loose because it's fighting against muscle tension. There's a little bit of silver on his back. I'm just going to cover that in a red spot because maybe he's got some injuries, and that's fine too. He's probably got injuries, and that's normal. It's a good place to do any kind of fixing too. Like if there was like a weird spot you didn't like and you didn't fix it before, this is a good way to fix that. Let's just get this red. Fix it with a boot. Fix that little spot there. See that? Any spots where the paint's not how you want it. Now on his head here, I'm going to come along the back of his head, up in this little gap in the top, and halfway across his face. Just with that red to show that it's tearing away at the flesh. And then just come in where you see the need. I don't need it everywhere, and I feel like I've already done too much. I'm pretty happy with him. All right. Let me get some of these brushes put away before I have a heart attack. I'm trying really hard to keep my work area clean. It gets hard to do that whenever you make a lot of videos in a short amount of time. It gets hard to keep things clean. When I was making them every day, I kind of put myself in a ritual to where I was doing a good job of it. But now it's not so much like that. I'm missing a brush. Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? All right, let's give him one more catalog. Pretty easy, huh? Under an hour, we kit bashed him, armed him, painted him. We'll clear coat him in a little bit here once I'm sure everything's cured and dried. You can see his gross little eye with the blue iris. I didn't do a pupil. His teeth are nasty and dirty and brown. Get the plastic all stuck to him. So there you go. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell icon, and for fudge's sake, leave a comment. If you like these crafting tip and painting tips, just turn this recording around and play it in reverse, and you'll learn something new there too, I'm sure, or you'll go to hell. Thanks for watching.